Every story leaves something behind. A whisper, a shadow, a question that was never answered. Here, we dig through the forgotten files, the unsolved mysteries, the chilling true crimes, and the horrors people wish had stayed buried. From haunted legends to real-life nightmares, every tale is pulled straight from the horror archives. So turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and step carefully, because once a story enters the horror archives, it never truly leaves. The first story in this compilation is called "The Lap Counter Was Wrong." This one was sent to me by someone who swims at the same pool every week. Same lane, same time, same routine. Until the electronic lap counter started tracking someone who wasn't there. I swim at the same community pool every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. I've done this for 4 years, so when the electronic lap counter on the wall showed someone was already in my lane, swimming at 5:45 when the doors had just opened, I noticed the pool is at a small recreation center in Glendale. It's old. The tiles are that faded seafoam green from the 80s, and the fluorescent lights give everything a flat, clinical look. The water always smells a little too heavy on chlorine, like they're compensating for something. There are 6 lanes, and at that hour, I'm almost always the only one there. Just me and the lifeguard, Derek, who usually sits in the office watching something on his phone until his shift technically starts at 7. But that Tuesday, the lap counter for lane 4 read 14 laps. The counter is automatic. It uses a sensor pad on the wall that registers when someone touches it at the turn. I looked at lane 4. It was empty, perfectly still water, no ripples. I asked Derek if someone had been in early, and he said no. I was the first one through the door. He didn't seem concerned. I figured the sensor was glitching. I got in lane 3 and started my routine. Warm up, then sets of 200. About 10 minutes in, I stopped at the wall to check my time and happened to glance at lane 4's counter, 26. It had gone up 12 laps since I looked. I stared at the water in lane 4. Nothing, no one. The surface was glass. I told myself it was electrical. Old building, old wiring. I kept swimming, but here's the thing about swimming. When someone is in the lane next to you, you can feel it. The water shifts. There's a pressure change, a subtle current against your skin. And around my 6th set, I started feeling it. A drag on my left side, the lane 4 side, like water was being displaced by something moving parallel to me. I stopped mid-lap and stood up in the shallow end. Lane 4 was empty. I looked at the counter, 41. I looked at mine, 40. Whatever was registering on that sensor was matching me almost exactly, just 1 lap ahead. I got out of the pool. I didn't even shower. I just grabbed my bag and told Derek the lap counter was broken. He said he'd put in a maintenance request. I went back Thursday. The counter for lane 4 was at 0 when I arrived. Good, normal. I got in lane 3 and started swimming. 20 minutes in, I checked. Lane 4's counter read 32. I had done 30. This time I did something I wish I hadn't. I swam to the lane 4 side of my lane and looked down through my goggles into the water of lane 4. The pool is only 5 feet deep at that point. I could see the bottom clearly. The tiles, the drain, the lane line. But there was a shadow on the bottom of the pool. It was long and dark, and it was moving, not drifting the way shadows from the surface lights move. It was pulling itself along the bottom in a smooth, rhythmic motion, like a breaststroke. I got out and I didn't go back for 2 weeks. When I finally did, Derek told me they'd replaced the sensor pad in lane 4. He said when they pulled the old one off the wall, the touch plate was worn down, smooth, like something had been pressing against it over and over for a very long time. He laughed about it. I didn't. I swim in lane 1 now, the far side of the pool. I don't look at the counters anymore, but some mornings when I'm mid-lap and the water is quiet, I still feel that pull on my left side, and I don't turn my head to check. The next story is called The Deep End Tile. This one unsettled me because it's not about something in the water. It's about something in the floor of the pool itself, something that moved on its own. The tile at the bottom of the deep end had a face on it. I know how that sounds, but I need you to understand. It wasn't always there. I was 16, and worked as an assistant swim instructor at a private swim school in Plano, Texas. The facility had an indoor pool, 25 meters, heated year-round. The deep end was 9 feet, and the bottom was done in small white and blue mosaic tiles. I spent a lot of time at the bottom of that pool. We do brick retrieval drills with the kids, and I demo by diving down and sitting on the bottom, waving up at them. I knew every inch of that floor. One evening in October, I was closing up alone. The last class had ended at 7, the other instructor had left, and I was doing the final pool check, which just meant walking the deck, making sure no equipment was left in the water, checking the chemical readout. I walked to the deep end and looked down. The lights were still on underwater, and the pool was perfectly clear. There was a face in the tiles, right in the center of the deep end floor. It wasn't a drawing or a stain. It was the tiles themselves. Some of them had shifted, cracked, darkened in a pattern that formed 2 eyes, a nose and a mouth that was open, wide open, like it was screaming or gasping. The expression was unmistakable. I stood there staring at it for probably 2 full minutes before I convinced myself it was pareidolia, just random tile damage that my brain was assembling into a face. But I'd been looking at that floor for 8 months, 5 days a week. It wasn't there before. I took a photo with my phone. When I looked at the photo, I could still see it, but it looked less defined. Just cracked tiles. I showed it to my manager the next morning, and he said the grout was old. Tiles shift, it's nothing. They'd resurface eventually. Over the next 2 weeks, the face changed. I'm not talking about a dramatic transformation. I'm talking about small shifts that I could only notice because I was looking every single day. The mouth got wider. The eyes, the dark spots that formed the eyes, they moved closer together, like the face was slowly contracting into a tighter expression, more anguished. I started taking a photo every evening after close. I have 11 of them. When you flip through them in order, there is visible movement. The tiles are different in each one. I showed the series to another instructor, Kaylee, and she got very quiet. She told me she'd noticed it too, but didn't want to be the one to say it. Then one night, I was closing again. I walked to the deep end and looked down, and the face was gone. The tiles were just tiles, cracked in random places, grouted unevenly but no pattern, no face. I felt relieved for about 3 seconds. Then I looked at the shallow end. It had moved. The face was at the shallow end now, 3.5 feet of water, and it was different. The mouth was closed. The eyes were different shapes than before. They looked like they were looking up, not just up in general. There was an angle to them. They were oriented toward the deck, toward the spot where I always stood when I did my closing check. I quit 2 days later. I gave some excuse about school. The pool was resurfaced the following spring. New tiles, new grout, everything. Kaylee texted me a photo after the renovation. Clean white and blue mosaic. Beautiful. She texted me again 4 months later. One line. It's back. This next story is called The Drain at Willowbrook. This is one of those stories that starts with a childhood memory, the kind that only gets more disturbing the older you get, and the more you understand what actually happened. I almost drowned when I was 11, and it wasn't an accident. Something held me under. My family belonged to the Willowbrook Swim Club in southern New Jersey. It was a big outdoor pool complex, main pool, kiddie pool, a snack bar with concrete picnic tables. The main pool had a deep end that went to 12 feet with a diving board. The whole place had that summer chlorine smell, the kind that sticks to your skin for hours. The concrete deck was always burning hot by noon, and you could hear the filter system humming under everything like a low, constant growl. I was a decent swimmer, not competitive, but comfortable in the deep end. That day in July, I was diving for rings with my friend Marcus. We'd throw the weighted rings in and race to the bottom to grab them. The pool was crowded, but the deep end was mostly empty because the diving board was closed for maintenance. I threw a ring and watched it sink. It landed right next to the main drain at the bottom. The drain was covered by a large white grate, maybe 2 feet across, bolted down. I dove after the ring. I got to the bottom, grabbed it, and then my hand touched the grate. The grate was vibrating, not the normal hum of the filtration pump. It was pulsing, a rhythmic throb, like something was pushing against it from the other side. I pulled my hand back, and that's when I felt the suction. It grabbed my wrist, not the slow pull of a pool drain. This was sudden and directional, like a hand closing around my arm. I tried to push off the bottom, and my arm wouldn't come free. I was pinned to the grate at the wrist. I kicked and pulled, and the suction increased. My forearm was being pressed flat against the grate. I could feel the grid pattern cutting into my skin. I looked down through the water, and the grate was dark underneath. But something in that darkness shifted. I can't describe it better than that. Something adjusted its position below the grate, the way you'd shift your weight to get a better grip. I was out of air. I was 11 years old, and I was going to drown at the bottom of a swimming pool, surrounded by 30 people who had no idea. I thrashed and kicked, and my wrist twisted sideways and came free. I shot to the surface gasping, and when I pulled myself onto the deck, I was shaking so hard Marcus thought I was having a seizure. I had a bruise around my wrist that lasted 2 weeks. It was a perfect ring, dark purple, the exact width of the drain grate's rim. My parents thought I'd gotten my hand stuck and panicked. That's the version that made sense, so that's the one everyone accepted. But there's a detail I've never told anyone until now. When I was pinned to the grate, in those few seconds when I looked down into the darkness under it, I saw fingers. They were pale, almost white, long, thin, and they were wrapped around the underside of the grate, gripping it from below. 4 fingers of a left hand curled through the grid squares, and they were pulling. The Willowbrook pool was closed 2 summers later, not for renovations. The county shut it down after a structural inspection. The official report said the drainage system had extensive damage. Parts of the pipe network under the pool had collapsed, creating voids, open spaces beneath the pool floor that weren't supposed to exist. Some of these voids were large enough for a person. I looked up the inspection report as an adult. There was a note from one of the engineers that I've never been able to get out of my head. It said the interior surfaces of the voids showed unusual wear patterns, consistent with repeated physical contact. They couldn't explain it. Neither can I, but I know what I saw under that grate, and I know it saw me too. The 4th story is called the night swim footage. This one comes from a hotel worker who pulled up a security camera feed at 2 in the morning and saw something in the pool that shouldn't have been possible. I managed the night shift at a hotel in Savannah for 3 years. One night, the security system flagged motion in the pool area at 2 in the morning. What I saw on the camera feed is something I still think about almost every week. The hotel was a mid-range chain, 4 stories, built in the 90s. The pool was on the ground floor in a glass-walled enclosure, accessible from the lobby through a set of double doors that locked automatically at 10 p.m. After 10, you needed your room key to get in. The pool itself was small, maybe 40 feet long, and the room had that heavy warm air that indoor hotel pools always have. 2 security cameras covered it, one from the north corner, one from the south. The motion alert came at 2:14 a.m. I pulled up the feed on my monitor. The pool area was dark except for the underwater lights, which stayed on all night. They gave the water a glowing turquoise color that lit the whole room in this shifting, rippling light. There was someone in the pool, a woman. She was floating on her back in the center, arms out, completely still. She was wearing what looked like a dark dress, not a swimsuit, a full dress. The fabric fanned out around her in the water. Her hair was long and dark and spread out around her head. She wasn't moving at all. She looked dead. I grabbed the pool area key and walked down there fast. The whole way I was preparing myself to pull a body out of the water. When I pushed through the double doors, the pool was empty, completely still water. No one, no wet footprints on the deck, no towels, nothing. I went back to the desk and rewound the footage. She was still there on the recording, floating. I watched the whole sequence. She appeared at 2:11, not walked in, appeared. One frame the pool is empty, the next she's there floating. She stays motionless for 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Then at 2:14, the motion alert triggered because she moved, just her head. She turned her head toward the camera, the north camera, and she stayed like that, face toward the lens for 40 seconds. Then the footage glitched, Just a brief scramble of pixels, and she was gone. Pool empty. I checked the keycard logs. No room key had accessed the pool door since 9:47 p.m. I checked the south camera. The south camera showed the pool the entire time. Empty. No woman. The two cameras were recording the same pool at the same time and showing two different things. I reported it to my manager. He watched the north camera footage and didn't say anything for a long time. Then he told me to delete it and log the alert as a sensor malfunction. I asked him why. He said this has happened before. I asked how many times. He said he didn't want to talk about it, but he told me one thing. He said the previous night manager, the one who had the job before me, had reviewed similar footage about 8 months before I started. North camera only, same woman, same dress, same position. But in his footage, she wasn't looking at the camera. She was standing on the deck, on the north side of the pool, right below the camera, and she was looking up. The previous night manager quit the next day. No notice. I understood, because when I went back and looked at my footage one more time before deleting it, I paused on the frame where she turns her head toward the camera. I zoomed in. The resolution was poor, but I could make out her face well enough. Her eyes were open. Her mouth was open, and there was something wrong with the proportions. The mouth was too wide. It stretched past where a mouth should end. It almost reached her ears. I deleted the footage. I finished my shift. I kept working there for another year because I needed the job, but I never pulled up the pool camera at night again. If the motion alert went off, I logged it as a sensor error and I didn't look. I don't want to know if she's getting closer to the camera. This last story is the one that disturbed me the most out of this entire compilation. It's called The Other Children at Cypress Cove, and it involves a 4-year-old girl and the friends she made at a pool that no one else could see. My daughter told me she made friends at the pool. She said they lived in the water and they wanted her to come live there too. She was 4 years old. We had just moved to a rental house in rural Louisiana, about 20 minutes outside Lafayette. The house came with access to a shared pool at a small community called Cypress Cove. The pool was behind a chain-link fence in a clearing surrounded by cypress trees. It was old and not well maintained. The water was clean enough, but the concrete was cracked. The fence leaned in places, and the whole area had a forgotten feel to it, like people had stopped caring about it a long time ago. There was no lifeguard, no attendant, just a combination lock on the gate. We started going in the afternoons, my daughter Lily and me. She loved it. She'd splash around in the shallow end with her floaties on while I sat on the edge with my feet in the water. We were almost always alone. In 3 weeks of going regularly, I saw other people there maybe twice. The first thing that bothered me was Lily talking to no one. She'd be in the shallow end, water up to her waist, and she'd be having a full conversation, laughing, responding to things, turning her head to look at someone who wasn't there. Kids have imaginary friends. I know that, but when I asked who she was talking to, she said the other kids. I asked what other kids. She pointed at the water next to her and said they are right here. She said there were 3 of them, 2 boys and a girl. She said they were very pale and they didn't blink. I told myself it was imagination, but Lily started saying things that unsettled me in a specific way. She said the kids told her the pool was much deeper than it looked. She said they told her there were rooms underneath. She said the girl told her that if you go to the drain at the bottom and hold your breath long enough, you can fit through, and there's a place on the other side where you never have to come back up. One afternoon, I was watching Lily play, and she suddenly ducked under the water. I didn't react immediately because she did that sometimes, but she didn't come back up. 3 seconds, 5. I jumped in and grabbed her. She came up coughing, and when I asked her what happened, she said Emma pulled her under. Emma was the name she'd given the girl. I stopped taking her to the pool after that. She cried about it for days. She said the other kids were sad. She said they missed her. Then she said something that made me go cold. She said they come to the house at night. She said they stand outside her window, but they are all wet, and they don't talk outside the water. They just watch. I checked outside her window that night. The ground beneath the window was muddy. There were footprints in the mud. Small footprints, children's footprints. 3 sets. They came from the direction of the road that led to the pool, and they stopped directly under Lily's window. They didn't lead away. They just stopped, like whoever made them was still standing there, or had gone somewhere I couldn't follow. I called our landlord the next morning. I asked about the pool, about the history of the community. He was quiet for a while, and then he told me the pool had been closed once before, in 2003. 3 children had drowned in it within an 18-month period, all in the deep end, all under circumstances that were never fully explained. The families moved away. The pool was drained, inspected, and reopened after the county cleared it. The landlord said people around Cypress Cove don't use that pool anymore. He said he should have told me that before we moved in. I asked him the names of the children. He only remembered 2 of them. One was a boy named David. The other was a girl named Emma. We moved out within the month. Lily stopped talking about the other kids after we left, but every now and then, even now, 3 years later, she'll say something in passing that stops me dead. Last week she was taking a bath. I was in the hallway, and I heard her laughing and talking quietly. I opened the door and asked who she was talking to. She looked at me and smiled and said, "Emma says hi." Then she went back to playing with her toys like nothing happened. The bathwater was cold. She said she hadn't noticed.
And that's where tonight's file closes, but the archives are far from empty. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and join us as we uncover more horrors, mysteries, and true crimes hidden in the horror archives. Until next time, keep the lights low, keep listening, because you never know what story we'll uncover next.